What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the next layer, where we dig deep with athletes, adventurers, community builders, all pushing limits in every sense. I'm your host, Anthony Dragassis, one of the founders at ELOS, and today we are joined by three-time Olympian Megan McJames, a skier who defied the system as she became the first American skier to pioneer a path to the Olympics after being cut from the national team. Her story has been told in a number of publications and is most notably available on Amazon Prime. The film is titled Trailblazer and has inspired millions to follow their dreams in the face of adversity. I am super stoked for this one. Without further ado, it is a privilege to introduce Megan McJames. How are we doing this morning?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we do have too much to cover in too little time. I am so intrigued about to get into this story for our audience. But I do want to kind of take a step back and a big reflection point of going all the way back to kind of your origins. And obviously, being a three-time Olympian didn't start overnight. So if you can take us back a little bit into kind of your first memories on skis and growing up in Utah and what those first days were like for you and how you got into this world and that dream of Olympics kind of dawned, I guess.
Yeah, so my story starts when I was 2. My parents were instructors at the ski area. And so it was kind of just a family culture. We were at the mountains, and that love for the sport and skiing was really instilled early. At the beginning, it wasn't so much about racing, it was just about skiing and being on the mountains with family. And so that love in the end kind of ended up being the fuel for what fueled me through this independent journey. But at the beginning, it was just, a culture of what we did as a family. And then, when I was about 8, I joined the Park City ski team. And I think at the beginning, it was just a way for my parents to get some babysitting on the weekends. Um, every year it got more serious. And as a junior, I was the best in the country and really was enjoying that competition piece, pushing the limit and going fast. And my senior year in high school, I made the US ski team. And that was my purpose, was to ski and try to go fast and try to get as high as I could go. I remember, I think I say this in the film, my dad was like psyched on the idea of getting some college paid for. He was like, "We could do NCAA." But I knew right from the beginning that I wanted to be an Olympian. And I don't really know where that idea came from. The Olympics were in Salt Lake, where I grew up, in 2002. And so that was a really kind of cool experience that maybe lit the spark. But it was, I was all in high school, and the first few years on the US ski team were golden years. I mean, I was, skiing well, starting to do World Cup, which is, the highest international level of ski racing. And, it was all going well. It was all up and up and really exciting. There was a lot of travel. We got to go to a lot of cool places. Ski racing is kind of like football in Europe. It's like the thing. And so it was pretty cool to go be over there and see people so excited about the sport that you loved so much. And so that was kind of the beginning, the all the up and up.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's funny, like I think, and I could definitely relate in the sense of when you're a kid and you obviously I didn't realize and put it together that the Olympics were in Salt Lake in 2002, but having these big dreams, that's something that always fascinates me about talking to athletes at the highest level, of just kind of the having the blinders on to just go get something without even really knowing where that comes from. Obviously, the you fell in love with skiing, as you said, from a very young age, and that has a lot to do with it. But sometimes when we're that age, just a dream like that and the passion behind it can just fuel this crazy ascent. And that's a really cool story for you, of just, how you kind of grew to that point. And obviously, as you're talking about, you started to talk about the national team rise for you. What was that like, making the US ski team, and then kind of in the lead up to the 2010 Vancouver Olympics and qualifying? What was that experience like when you kind of got into the facilities, and from how you've described it, it kind of seemed like, obviously, or it is, this surreal thing of just, all the coaches backing you, the organization backing you, and all that kind of stuff. Can you kind of describe those early days of being with the US ski team, and then in the lead up to the 2010 Vancouver Olympics, how that kind of all shaked out for you?
Yeah, I think that when I qualified for the US ski team, I knew how to ski fast. I knew how to make a good turn. And like you're saying, when you're young, you're super confident. But the thing the US ski team taught me was how to be a professional athlete. And that was a different level. And so they have a big facility in Park City, Utah, called the Center of Excellence, where there's a gym, there's physical therapy, nutritionists. And then a big piece of it Two is the support on the hill and while you're traveling. So somebody is tuning your skis, waxing your skis, making sure they're in perfect shape for the conditions. And then a big piece that I discovered as I went independent is having the support, especially at the start. When you're standing in the start of a race against the best in the world, you need to be confident. And if you're standing there looking around being like, everyone else has 10 staff members and what am I doing here? It's really hard to believe in yourself. And so I think that was a piece that as I went independent, I realized, how do I rebuild this confidence and believe in myself when, the powers that be have told me that I'm not good enough.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about that experience of, being a professional when you join the U.S. ski team and like having other, great Olympic athletes around you like Lindsey Vonn and Julia Mancuso and that original team in 2010. Talk about kind of that experience of, how you learned what it was like to be a professional skier.
Yeah, I think as Americans, we pay attention to Olympic sports every 4 years, but really it's a full lifetime commitment. You are every 4 years, you're going to the Olympics, but between that, there's the World Cup and World Championships that you're always trying to stay at your best to compete at. And so everything you do is like feeding into this goal of being the best skier you can be. And in the summer, you're working out. In the fall, you're traveling to the southern hemisphere to try to find the snow. And then in the winter, you're on the road a lot of the time in Europe, but you're just following the World Cup circuit around the world. And the team aspect, they become your family because you're like experiencing the highest highs and lowest lows together. And so it's really important to have those people around. And especially with the other athletes, I think that you want to win, but if you don't win, you want your teammates to win. And so it's like it's really a family in that aspect. I think as I went independent, I felt like there was a lot of politics with the U.S. ski team itself, but never between the athletes because there's a mutual respect of what it takes to get to that level. And so, we're all trying to do our best and beat each other and then cheer for our friends when we have a rough day. And you mentioned the 2010 Olympics, and I think that everyone kind of, is like, what was your favorite Olympics? And they all had their own character. I went to 2010, 14, and 18. The really exciting thing about 2010 was it was my first one. And so that energy of the Olympics Games is like no other race I've ever experienced. And I think my favorite part was just walking into the opening ceremonies representing my country. Like the feeling of that energy is just very unique. And, I was very proud, it was like, I had dreamed of this for a long time. And so it was very exciting to be there and be part of the team.
Yeah. I feel like that's something that only when you're there, you fully capture and realize the gravity of the situation during the opening ceremony. I mean, it's powerful coming through a TV screen, so I can imagine having boots on the ground and there for one of those. I mean, it's super powerful and I feel like, that's such a cool moment for you to remember. And yeah, I mean, like I said, your journey is filled with highs and some lows as well. And as we kind of flow through here, I mean, the first low obviously happened in 2011, I believe, when you injured yourself with the broken heel. And we're out for the entire season. And so, a lot, unfortunately at the highest level, injury is a big part of athletics. And so as you had to go through that, are there any tips that you have for any athletes out there that may be going through a long-term injury and having to miss an extended period of time and, for a sport that, all sports at that level become your identity. And so when you kind of lose that, I know the challenges that are associated. So do you have any advice for any athletes out there that may be going through something like that?
Yeah, well, so in 2011, my heel bone snapped in half in the apex of a turn. And at the time, it almost felt like a little bit of a relief because I had not been skiing my best. If we're completely honest, it was a world championship season and there was a lot of pressure to qualify. And so we went to world championships, the big race was over, and then my heel bone just cracked. And I was almost like, okay, this is my excuse to slow down a little bit. And I think it was, I never really thought, okay, this is going to end my ski career, but it was almost like, okay, I need to like take a step back and figure out the things that are going to make a difference to rebuilding this in a stronger, better way. And so I guess my advice would just be like it's almost like a opportunity or glass half full. Obviously you never want to get injured, but it's almost, for me, it was like a moment to reset and be like, okay, how, you weren't skiing that well. There was a lot of strain on your foot. What can we fix to make this better going forward? Knowing in my core that I still had good turns to make in my future.
Right, for sure. For sure. And always taking the optimistic approach during those times is the powerful thing. I mean, I'm lucky enough that when I was competing athletically, I never had to go through anything long term, and just, the folks that were around me, my teammates that were going through some of it. I mean, I was impressed sometimes at just the positivity that they were able to exude during such a time of not being able to impact on ice, or sorry, on snow or on the field. And just, that's super powerful, and taking the positive approach of, well, maybe, things happen for a reason, as you said, and this is a time for the reset, and those things can really help you get through those times. And something that I've, witnessed throughout my playing career as well. Just, the positivity can really go a long way during those times. And I think that's great advice for sure.
Easier said than done, but yes.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And one of the things that I just wanted to touch on too, because shortly after this, obviously, you talked a lot, and you and your teammates as well have been pretty open about your experience with coaching, specifically when Coach Rowland came in 2012. And, that's obviously a time that, for, as you've spoken about, the verbal abuse that was going on, and what that can do for confidence. And you were mentioning that earlier in our conversation about confidence and how important that is, especially for, speed racing that you're in, that you made your career on. And so talk a little bit about that experience, and what, if you can reflect, what helped you grow from that experience, and in what ways did you grow, and what did you take away from that experience as you kind of moved on in your career post 2012, 2013, after all the stuff that went on with the ski team.
Yeah, so I think for people who haven't seen Trailblazer, I was injured and I was in this phase of rebuilding back. So the 2011 season, I got hurt, broke my heel bone. The 2012 season, they hired this new coach, Roland, who was very focused on winning. And as a person rebuilding back, I was not there yet. And it was just a really abusive relationship. Some of the teammates in the film talk about the details of it, but by the end of that 2012-13 season, my parents, teamed up with some other parents and wrote a letter to the ski team saying that, can we change this environment? And in the end, I got cut from the team. So instead of fixing the environment, they just let me and another teammate go. Who's to say what the reasoning is behind it? But for me, moving forward, I tried to take this attitude of like, I'm going to show them, and, kind of a bitter attitude. Like I'm going to show them. And, very quickly I realized that the key to being an independent ski racer was to really get back to the roots of why am I a ski racer, And so I had to be able to be successful as an independent ski racer, I had to reconnect with this love of the sport. And so it was a process of relearning how to believe in myself. And I think it's easy to talk about some of the hard parts of independent ski racing. And just to clarify, independent ski racing is just me going on my own after being cut from the U.S. ski team. And I did that because I knew that I just believed in my core that there was still turns in me. I wasn't done yet, but I didn't know all the details of how that was going to work. And so it was a process of re-believing in myself after being cut and being told that I wasn't good enough. And honestly, after having a couple seasons where I wasn't skiing that great. And so it was rebuilding from the bottom up. In the film, we kind of talk about, we had to take some steps back to re-earn my World Cup spot. And it was just a long process. Looking back, there was a lot of hard moments of like, what is the point? Why don't I just quit and move on to, get a desk job or something that is not so stressful? But looking back, it was, really fulfilling. I mean, in the end, I was able to make 2 Olympics as an independent skier, which is something that I was really proud of. I think it's easy to look at like Megan's not a gold medalist or whatever that next step is, but I was really proud to be there because there was a lot of hurdles to being the first independent skier to qualify for the Olympics. And so I think the theme that is really universal from this story is like, how do you believe in yourself and that confidence that we've been talking about? And That's kind of the intangible that was like a little bit harder than fundraising or organizing a workout plan or training and stuff. It was like really that mental piece for me that caused a lot of personal growth, and looking back was really fulfilling.
Yes, I think another theme that really shines through in your story is humility, and you mentioned it a little bit in the sense of, just to put a little bit more color, taking a step down levels when you had an automatic bid to the World Cup, and taking a step down shows a great level of self-awareness and humility that I don't think like can be fathomed for some people, which is pretty crazy. Now, you did start mentioning the difficulty of being an independent athlete and what that means. For our audience, can you just give a little bit more color, logistically, emotionally, what it takes to be independent? Because this was super fascinating when I was learning about it. Can you just speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so we talked about before a little bit all of the perks of being on the US ski team. And so all of a sudden, all of that is gone. And so I was cut in the spring of 2013, or I guess 2012. And I had to think about like, how am I going to get myself ready to compete with the best in the world by next fall? And so a piece of it was fundraising, travel the world, but a lot of other stuff, we had to like organize a dryland program. There's health insurance involved. There's, I don't know, so many things. Your equipment. You have like, you should see my garage right now. There's like tens of hundred, we probably have like 50 skis a year, and you're trying to figure out which ones are the best, which were got which conditions. And it's a lot for one person, but we also didn't have the funds to hire a full-time staff. So we were trying to manage that. And like what I really found through the process of was like, I only have limited resources. What are the things that really matter? What's most important to making me ski fast? And so we focused on those and did the best we could. I mentioned it a little bit before, but one piece was, I always wanted to have someone in the start gate with me, just to help me believe in myself when I was looking around being like, what am I doing here? Because that confidence piece when you're trying to put it all on the line is really important. And so that was something we always made sure we had funds for. And we would just, hire a coach here or there on a project basis. And then, I'm kind of rambling, but there's a lot of pieces to being an independent skier. All of a sudden we were organizing, and it was good though, because it was something that I could do, like those things were things that I could organize. And really the biggest piece was like, how do you believe in yourself? How do you follow your dreams in the face of adversity? And I think that was the maybe biggest piece that I didn't realize going into it. And I don't know if I realized all the politics and details when I decided I was going to be an independent skier. I just knew that I wanted to keep skiing. But my husband always jokes that I like start with enthusiasm and then realize what I got myself into, which is totally true. But in the end, it turned out to be, like a great journey, because this personal growth that I had to go through to keep going when things got really hard is something that I don't regret.
Yeah, for sure. And I liken it to just in my mind, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but like I just liken it to essentially starting your own business around your career.
Yeah.
And that's something that I can definitely relate to in terms of like, well, you're saying what pushes you in that direction. Well, it's the passion. That's what gets you out of bed every day, right? You know that you can ski fast. You know that that's what's going. But I don't think you could have anticipated all the fundraising that had to go into it, which
Yeah.
is also a part of running a startup company. And
Yeah.
then logistically, I have this picture in my head of you getting to the mountain at like 4 or 5 a.m., setting the terrain, the training conditions, and then once you get off the mountain, maybe lifting, and then trying to raise some money for the project. And that's super inspiring, just the amount of time, effort, and just will that you had to make this happen, because I don't think a lot of people realize all the details that go in to making the Olympics as an independent, because that is, as we talked about before, I mean, you can't replicate the support that you receive from an entire organization with unlimited money backing it. And having to do it on your own just speaks volumes to your journey and what you were able to accomplish. So congratulations on all that, and thank you so much for walking us through.
Well, thank you. And I think the cool thing for me is in Trailblazer, it was really cathartic to go through the process to make this. And, it's been really cool to hear people how they connect with it, because it's a ski movie. Obviously, it's talking about my journey to the Olympics, but I think there's some really universal themes in there of like you're talking about passion, but facing these hurdles and how do you keep going. And so it's been really fulfilling to like kind of work through that story and then and connect with all kinds of different people through that storytelling.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. I had a couple more questions before we move into just some more details, but um, Like one thing that I'm really curious about is how you kind of have seen your identity evolve throughout this entire journey. And then specifically, if you can put into words like that moment in 2014 when you found out that you were going to the Olympics. Was it relief? Like, was it what was that feeling like? And how have you seen yourself kind of evolve throughout, these, a lot of adversity in your life, to be honest?
Yeah, I think we didn't know if it was possible to make the Olympics without being on the US ski team. It had never been done, and so we knew that I had to qualify for criteria. There was going to be no coach's discretion or anything like that. I had to prove that I belonged there through scoring World Cup points, basically. And that was kind of eye-opening because, I had been like this golden girl growing up, and then all of a sudden it was like, nope, you have to earn it. And so I think if we're talking about identity and growth, it has made me very self-reliant. Like the confidence piece that has come up a few times in this conversation, like you start off your independent career questioning, why do I belong here? And by the end, you're like, I'm a skier. My purpose is to try to push the limit and go fast. And that's why I'm here. And so it becomes less about the results and the outcome. And you're like, the journey, this is, why I'm here and my purpose. And so, there's still moments where you question like who I am. But in those days, it was to be a skier. And I really loved that purpose. And in the end, the journey was super fulfilling without any gold medal at the end.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Sometimes the journey is better than the result. And looking back to that is really powerful. We've spent a lot of time on your skiing career. Obviously, you retired in 2018. What does purpose look like for you now? I know you were speaking to purpose back then was being a professional skier. What does it look like for you now?
Yeah. So in 2018, I was at the Olympics and I was starting to just kind of think about things outside of ski racing. And, ski racing, you have to be very focused and consumed. And so I feel very grateful that I was able to retire on my own terms. I just decided I was ready. And so after the 2018 Olympics, I retired from racing, but I would say that skiing is still a huge part of my identity. And I've almost fallen in love with it in some new ways since retiring. I was so focused on arcing the perfect turn for so many years. And now I'm like playing in the powder and learning about the backcountry and so that has been super fun. And I actually have a new film out this fall. It's on tour this fall. It's called Still Blazing, and it's kind of a follow-up to Trailblazer, but since retiring, I've had two daughters, and it talks about how do you balance this idea of being someone who loves to push the boundaries in the mountain, but is also a caregiver? And then the new additional layer that I've been really enjoying is passing my passion of skiing onto them. And so, my 3-year-old is skiing. My 1-year-old's going to start this winter, and it's super fun. I feel like, the holy grail is the perfect powder day, or it was always. But I now wouldn't even say that it's more or less fun than hitting the magic carpet with my daughter Hazel. And so it's just different. But that's kind of my purpose now. And of course, the normal. I'm an accountant on my day job, and but my husband he was a World Cup slalom skier as well. And so, we have carried on this family culture of we love to be in the mountains, we love to adventure. And so, yeah.
Well, congratulations on the new film releasing. Definitely,
Yeah.
everyone check that out. That's really cool. And it's super awesome that your legacy you can pass that on to your family and your kids. I think that's kind of the full circle moment. And it's really cool that you're finding joy in that, and that's kind of what your purpose is around now. And I think there's no other way to kind of progress your journey and like that this is the best way to do it, I think. So that's super awesome. Now,
Thank
just a
you.
couple, we'll just rapid fire questions before we close out. But what I know you kind of talked a little bit about that first opening ceremony, but do you have a most memorable Olympic moment that comes to mind from any of the three?
Well, just when you say that, something that comes to mind is in the 2018 Olympics, I was not on the US ski team, and a friend of mine was on Team Mexico. So I needed some help. Part of the thing with the Olympics is it was really hard to get staff there because you need credentials and you're not finding out if you qualify till last minute. And so I was alone, and Team Mexico helped me get my skis and cheered for me out of the start. And I just felt like, the US team is not helping me, but this Olympic spirit is still alive. And here is Team Mexico helping me and cheering me out of the start. And I just thought that was super cool.
Is really cool. That is really cool. What did you have, or was there any athlete that you looked up to growing up when you were getting into skiing?
Yeah, so maybe a name you have or haven't heard of, but Sarah Schlepper. She was on the US ski team for a long time. She won a slalom World Cup. And the reason I kind of love her as much as some of the other superstars that big names or whatever is her love for the sport. She is like even more of a passionate skier than I am, and she just loves racing. Like she loves racing, and so it was really cool to see her fire for competition. And she was one of the older girls when I made the US ski team, and just she was competitive, but like outward she'd be like, what is your time and how did you get that time? And I love just having her be like really forward with authentic with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, awesome, Megan. I really appreciate your time today and sharing that awesome story. As she mentioned, go check out obviously the film Trailblazer, and then just correct me if I'm wrong. It's Trail Still Blazing. This is the new film.
Yes, Trail Still Blazing. It's on tour with the Girl Winter Film Tour. And then I think it will be available online in January. But the best way to get updates is to go to my website or Instagram and yeah, Megan McJames.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure to tag both Megan's website and her Instagram anywhere that you can check out all of her stuff. So again, Megan, really appreciate the time today. Go check out Megan's Instagram and her website. If you like this one, share, tag us at ELOS Thermal. Until next time, stay warm, stay gritty, and keep chasing the next layer. Thanks, everyone.